Thank you all for being here today. It's really such a fantastic testament to the work that Lake County Lake Lovers has done to bring people together to talk about lakes and get community involvement and engagement. And really, we could not have grown our program to what it is today without the support of Lake County Lake Lovers and the involvement of so many passionate people that are part of that organization. So thank you, Mary.
Well,
So I'm
this
Jennifer Kahn. I've been teaching since 2014. So I was a career changer. I was a systems analyst before I was becoming a teacher. So I'm a second career teacher and started off teaching biology and some chemistry classes as well. And I also I'm a adjunct professor at College of Lake County, and I teach the dual credit Earth Science course as well here at the high school. So students learn about Earth Science and then get credit not only at the high school level, but they graduate with college credit from College of Lake County. I'm also involved in two environmental clubs actually at our school. One is we have one club that we call the thinkers and one the doers. So kind of a different focus on what kind of work that they do. But it's great that we've had the support of our school to be able to support and sustain not only the projects that we've engaged in over the last several years, but the clubs and give students a way to engage with our local environment inside and outside the classroom. So I'm going to start just with a quick overview of what place-based education, which is really what we're doing. What we're all doing is learning through observing the local environment. Um, Place-based education is kind of like if you look at some of the educational journals about theories in education and how we should be doing education and what's effective, this place-based education has come up several times. And if any of you are educators, you might have heard of project-based learning before. Project-based education is a little bit different than PBL. Project-based learning relies on some kind of phenomenon that might drive discussion and inquiry in the classroom, but it doesn't necessarily have to be locally based, right? It's some kind of stimulus at the beginning of a lesson that drives and kind of is a thread through the lesson. So place-based education really kind of takes project-based learning to the next level, thinking that, okay, if you give students some kind of stimulus or something that to connect to that's local, that could drive engagement, right? So one of the main central points of our place-based education model is that it does prioritize this experience, a student experience, and that it's community-based and it's locally ecologically based. So we give context to different problems or content that we're learning about by exploring our own backyard. And then also it links into this our local culture, our local environment, and things that students see and drive by every day and maybe don't notice. It also really does encourage a strong sense of active learning, right? That students are making a connection locally, but also making those local connections on the global scale. So they're understanding how global processes happen by observing what's going on this local scale. Place-based education is also shown to have engagement outcomes, positive engagement outcomes that improve student engagement in activities and this social emotional connection because they have this connection to in sense of place. Real world problem solving, right? Like especially at the high school level, it's nice to be able to leverage their foundational knowledge about the world and the controversy and how things work. It's I feel like it's fun to get students excited about something that they could possibly have a say in or change, right, or improve. Um, so that the project-based learning or place-based education often directs students or gives students the opportunity to voice what they've learned and petition for change. So place-based education has its history. Mainly, you see it appear in the literature in the 1990s. There are educational reforms that were happening at that time that kind of decentralized this connection to place and culture by standardizing some of the curriculum that was taught and kind of removing um, that unique perspective that a place or culture could provide. And in response to that, we saw like the pendulum kind of swing back with some teachers who wanted to really bring the focus back to this place-based learning. Um, After COVID, though, or during COVID and afterwards, we found a renewed interest in place-based education because students were forced to learn outside, or teachers had to engage with students doing labs or doing activities that they could do in their backyard. So this resurgence came in the COVID era. This it was a big aha moment for me that actually came a few years later, because I only realized recently that I was a product of place-based education in the 1990s. It all kind of like made sense to me. Oh, maybe this is why I do what I do. So if nothing else, like this Butler Lake Day and the projects that we've been doing in our campus is really another piece of evidence that place-based education is impactful, because this is what I did. So at Glenbrook North High School, it was the first year that they tried a curriculum with biology that anyone enrolled in regular biology class would not learn the standard way that we had been learning. Instead, we would take a look at the West Fork of the North Branch of the Chicago River and learn every single biology concept through studying the river. So they called the course Rivers Biology, and that sounded interesting to me. I really wasn't a science person at all. Science and math were just not my thing going into high school. Um, and that opened the doors to other projects, like taking that a brain studies class, which is fascinating to me. But we also, as a high school, sent experiments aboard the space shuttle. So we built and developed and designed experiments that actually flew in the space shuttle. And again, not being a science, I never took an AP class, never took an honors class. I was not a science kid, but I was the #1 national winner of a NASA science competition my junior year. So how quickly I went from, I don't really have an interest in science, I don't see a future in science, to something that really ignited my interest in the world and how it worked. So that was kind of a cool moment for me. For those of you who know Bill Cody, it was around 2015, I think, that Bill Cody approached from Lake County Lake Lovers, before Lake County Lake Lovers, approached me and said, we really have to do something about Butler Lake and about the shoreline around Butler Lake, which was overgrown with invasive species. It really blocked there's a nice walking path around the lake, and you really couldn't see the lake because of all these tall phragmites that were growing around it. And he had a very reasonable vision of, why don't we just start with, one class and clear a little bit of the invasives, maybe just a small patch. And every year, a small patch we'll work on until we get all the way around the lake. And it might take 40 years, and that's okay. Let's just get started. And apparently he had reached out to other people in the past too, trying to engage our students. He understood, he saw the vision, and he understood the potential of engaging students in this kind of work. But it wasn't until 2018 that everything fell together. And that's because our district had never offered an AP environmental science class. And so I was tapped to develop the curriculum and begin that course starting in the fall of 2018. I had, like I said, I did not have any experience teaching it. I didn't have another coworker who I could lean on for, curriculum and things like that. So my district sent me to San Antonio to learn and be trained how to teach AP environmental science. So I spent the whole summer writing curriculum. When I tell you I spent the whole summer writing curriculum, I spent the entire summer writing a detailed curriculum, and week by week, and exactly what we were doing and activities. And I was so proud of the work I did. And I will tell you that we only got a week and a half in, and I did not use any of that curriculum after about a week and a half. And the reason is because in August of 2018, there was a fish kill in Butler Lake. Something very tangible. All the kids were walking by Butler Lake. They could see thousands of dead fish. It smelled bad. Everyone wanted to know what's going on with the lake. What happened with the lake? We didn't know what happened, right? So kind of the reveal is already on the screen here about what happened. But at the time, we really didn't know what caused this fish kill. And everyone in the school was aware that this was happening. And I looked at my students and I said, do we want to continue on with the book and this chapter, or should we go find out what killed the fish? And they're like, let's find out what killed the fish. So threw the curriculum that I worked so hard on totally out the window. Now, this was a really difficult thing for me to do because I wasn't planning on teaching the water unit until second semester. So we had all this new equipment and probeware. It was still in its package. I had no idea how to use it. I thought I had time to learn how to do this before I'd be thrust into it. But it ended up being such a great gift, actually, not having experience and not knowing anything about what I was getting myself into, not knowing the history of Butler Lake or I mean, I knew the idea of what eutrophication was ultimately, but really I did not have the understanding that I would need and that I thought I would need in order to lead a project to go find out what killed the fish. But again, it ended up being such a huge benefit because my students were tasked with, you go find this out. I don't know how to use this Pasco, oh, that should say probeware, this probeware, this dissolved oxygen probe. I don't know how to use it. I was planning on reading it. You guys are going to have to read the instructions on how to use it and practice it. And your guys are going to have to organize yourselves. You guys are going to have to know what it is that you want to test for. And you're going to have to do it soon because we can't let too much time go by between the fish kill and when we're actually taking data in order to solve the mystery of what killed the fish. So the students read up on the 2015 Butler Lake report to get a sense of the history of the lake and what its previous readings were across all these parameters and what is turbidity and what's the role of nitrates and phosphates. It was like a crash course in lake science for those students that was led by those students. After they identified kind of the things that they would have to measure, they organized themselves into groups. And I had two environmental science classes, so they had to figure out how are we going to work together and organize ourselves between those two class periods that didn't have any common time to plan in order to do this investigation. So it was really fantastic watching this unfold and how passionate they were because this was their lake and something happened to the lake and they were going to find out what happened with their lake, um, which is really, really amazing. Then they got this sense after taking some of the data, well, maybe it was an herbicide that was applied that seemed to make sense. An herbicide that was applied to the lake that killed the plants. So we're going to have a group that investigates the herbicide and a group that's responsible for developing the procedure for how we're going to sample and test the water. A group that was actually going to test that water and interpret then the results. So these expert groups kind of came together on the fly in order to make this happen. So after we figured out what happened, they had to put together a presentation. So you're seeing some of the slides, of the presentation that they ended up asking the mayor to come to our school so they could talk to the mayor about what happened with the lake and how we might prevent this in the future. What's the role of the village? What's the role of the residents? What can Libertyville High School do? How can we all make sure that this doesn't happen to our lake again? And as a result of the students' presentation to the mayor and the direct ask about how herbicides are applied to aquatic invasive plants, what are best practices, and did our vendor use those best practices? Safeguards were put in place at the village level to make sure that this wouldn't happen again, that our contracts with the herbicide applicators would specify the correct temperature and dissolved oxygen conditions that would be appropriate in order to apply this herbicide to the invasive plants. So that was amazing because these kids walked away having accomplished that, right? That was because of their advocacy that we had a real policy change at the village level. And what a great experience for the kids the whole way, but then to present to the mayor, and have that kind of outcome. Um, and I'm just so appreciative too of the village and the mayor for coming out and listening to that and really listening to those student voices. And I understand why their presentation kind of commanded the attention and action of the village because they knew what they were talking about. They understood the processes and they did a great job of communicating what could be done and what role everyone played in making sure that our lake was healthy. So this was great. It got a lot of attention too. So the kids got to be in the Chicago Tribune and the Daily Herald. And that was also really exciting for students as well to see that the work they did actually mattered. It was very cool. And then here's basically, so this Butler Lake report is written by Lake County Health Department Ecological Services, and it really provided the cornerstone for understanding and interpreting our data because this was a few years after the 2015 report was written. So we had something to compare our data against and really to understand historically what those challenges were. So our students learned that, historically we've had issues with Butler Lake with flooding and invasive aquatic plants, invasive fish, and mussels. phosphates kind of exceeding the EPA limit at some point too, the suspended solids, and then historically the chloride ion, undoubtedly from road salt application, which is not currently one of our issues, but historically has been. But it kind of gave this at least path forward for our students to understand what kinds of things should we be looking out for and monitoring on an ongoing basis. So did they learn anything? After not teaching them anything, I don't know how well you know AP scores here, but basically the passing threshold is a 3. But the fact that so many of our kids were at a 4 and a 5, that the mean score, the average score was a 4.1 on the AP exam, which made it in the top 5 AP classes of the district, of the entire district. We made the top 5 that year. And the amount of kids that receiving credit at the 4 and 5 AP score level is just astounding. So yeah, they learned a lot. In fact, I will admit to you that this was my highest year of AP scores ever, which is just crazy. So after that, those AP results came in, I sent a message to my principal to ask,
Oh my
can we just
goodness.
kill the fish next year? Can we kill, like, this worked great. Like, can we like have an accident where we kill the fish next year? Because you can't replicate that, right? You can't replicate that experience of this naturally occurring phenomenon at the beginning of the school year that gets kids super excited and engaged in this kind of work. And of course, no, we can't kill the fish next year, but that led me to think of other ways to authentically engage students in this kind of work. Um, and there are going to be some slides that you'll have access to these slides, and there'll be some that I skip or just briefly mention because this was me kind of looking for other ways for kids to get local and be connected to local issues. So field trips and doing field work and looking at current events, um, and how those current events, even though it's a hurricane, how might that affect, us in the northern suburbs here. Having students do field work and maintaining a field journal online, which is really important, especially during COVID, because it was a way to keep students engaged in backyard science and science in their community at a time when we weren't seeing students face to face. And that there are, you'll see a whole other list of things here that started blooming from this experience as well, especially a focus on our shoreline of our lake, which is just as important to talk about when you're talking about lake health, because the shoreline is the kind of the last defense against things that get into the lake. So it provides an opportunity to filter the water, the runoff before it gets into the lake. So we started clearing those. This is what Bill Cody was contacting me about and saying, just do a little bit of a time. We did 300 linear feet that first year, and we did not do a little bit at a time. We did another 600 feet of shoreline and then 300 feet adjacent to that in the coming years. And we did a lot of that through grant money. So raising funds, and the grants that we applied for were all student-led grants. So they had to be the ones that pitched for the funding for their projects. By putting together a presentation, actually presenting in front of live, so it was over Zoom, but presenting in front of the panel to decide whether or not we would get the funding. So that was kind of cool. And then Butler Lake Day, like why not have a day where we investigate this further? And this actually came out of a conference, a lakes conference that I attended where Alana, who's at the Lake County Health Department Ecological Services, she was leading a talk about aquatic plants, and we got to talking and hey, maybe we could do something and collaborate. You're right down the street from us. And it led us to have this inaugural Butler Lake Day, which I'm not even sure we called it that. Um, it was a very neat opportunity where Alana and her team came out and did electro fishing, so shocking the fish in the lake that stuns them and it brings them to the surface so that you can do a population survey. They collect them, they bring them to the shoreline, and then the students would take their measurements, take their mass, measure their length, identify what species, and record that so we can get a sense of what is in our lake, right? And what does that tell us about the health of our lake? That was really neat. So we pulled that together, and that was not any of my classes. That was just the biology classes that I did this for biology and honors biology. It fit really well with what they were doing. And we thought that would be a good fit with their curriculum. So there's some some pictures. This is bringing back fond memories of those inaugural days. So, yeah, you're seeing students with minnow nets down here, collecting minnows. So the shocking brought up the big fish, and then we did minnow surveys as well with these nets that the health department brought in. So this is all their equipment that they brought, and the feedback from the students. If I was exhausted from throwing this together, and it wasn't even my students, what am I doing? Putting all this work and effort, and it's not even my students who are benefiting from this. I encourage you, because we just don't have the time in our presentation tonight, but to go back to this slide and read some of the comments that the students said, because this is what made me drive forward. How do we expand this? How do we make it bigger? I get comments like, I didn't know that people did this as a job, or like, I could do this, or I forgot that real people are scientists, or I thought that scientists just wear lab coats. Honestly, if you want a feel good read, come back to the slide and take a look at what the kids said after experiencing. These were our high school freshmen. And then we built with the shoreline restoration, just one chunk at a time, not Bill Cody's 25, or 5 feet at a time. Kept doing that. And then I kept engaging and learning, because I will tell you, I was not an expert on lakes, and I'm still not an expert on lakes. But I engaged in some learning too. I sailed aboard the EPA's vessel on Lake Ontario and actually engaged in some lake science and lake monitoring. And I learned how that was done professionally using professional tools, which was very cool. And then Butler Lake Day the next year, I'm like, I'm taking everything that I learned, and we're going to make this bigger and better. But I could not have done that without the support of Lake County lake lovers, who brought in expertise and staff and passion and organization in order to build this out, to have more students experience these things that our students were experiencing. So we brought in more community partners and some people in private industry, more people also from on the county level with stormwater management and Illinois EPA, and started offering more activities for students, including macroinvertebrates. And we took students out on kayaks in order to look at aquatic invasive plants and do water sampling, which was really great. And this is one of our local businesses who helped us clear the shoreline. And again, some just more things that we did in the interim on the shoreline. And then 2025, last year was just amazing. There were so many different things we were able to offer for students in different classes to engage. And in addition to what you see here, our PE, our gym classes also engaged in shoreline cleanup, invasive species removal. So we had, over 1,000 kids who were out on the shoreline on that day, which is really amazing. But again, we don't have the staff or resources to do that alone. We also got a grant for a boat, so that now we can go out and do some sampling without needing the help of our partners in order to go out in the boat and do sampling. This is some of our macroinvertebrate stations, collecting macroinvertebrates, sorting them after being instructed by the professionals. Our chemistry team, looking at different parameters. So our kids in the boat would sample from different depths, and then our chemistry team would analyze those samples. And then last year, it was the first time I brought my students out, which was amazing, an amazing experience, because I'm so busy coordinating everything that I don't have time to bring my student. I took the day off, right? I had to get a sub for my classes to do this. But our Ecos Club ended up running Butler Lake Day from our side of it. So the students were the ones who were in charge of the stations. And that allowed me to take my dual credit earth science class out and learn about stormwater management and how drone technology plays a role in monitoring. They also provided tours to our district staff, other teachers, collaborators, staff within our school, the district, and other schools. So we had different stations where we talked about the projects that we've been doing around the school and the importance of the work that we do all year round, not just on Butler Lake Day. So it's very neat that they were running those tours and I was off with my classes doing my thing. And I think it's also a testament to the leadership opportunities that these kinds of projects give to students, because they really owned Butler Lake Day, and they own the Shoreline Restoration Project, and they're able to communicate what they're doing. And it's changed lives, right? So just in summary, just my takeaways, I guess, from this entire experience is develop a sense of place. And that's a link that you can click on later to show in my first day of AP Environmental Science. What do we talk about? How do we develop that sense of place? How do we look at a map and say, where are we? which is something that students are not good at, identifying where we are in a map and kind of starting with that very zoomed in image and going out from there. Also, to implement a project, you can start small. You can go the Bill Cody way and start small. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to know about everything. All you need to know is identify issues and challenges that are specific to your local area, and bring. You don't have to have the equipment. Bring in the experts. Bring in the equipment. There are so many people. This is probably one of the biggest things for me that I get kind of emotional about. There are so many people who want to help kids. And there's so many people who are passionate that want to share their passion with kids. And so tapping into those resources, those people who are already so willing to help, it changes lives. It changes these kids' lives. I've seen kids who have gone off in totally different trajectories in their careers and exploration. I can see myself doing this. I could see myself getting involved in this. And I watch them go off to college and select careers that are really focused on the well-being of our environment and related sciences. So definitely a worthwhile endeavor, and something that no matter if you have a lake or a river or just a patch of weeds that are overgrowing a school area, there's opportunity in order to link these kids into their local community, their local environment, and really make a difference for the next generation.
Mhm. Well, and absolutely. So applause, applause. That was a great, great overview. And I know people here on the call have expressed interest in creating their own lake day. And you have a day coming up. Maybe you could talk about the opportunity to perhaps send teachers, because I put in the chat, Buffalo Grove High School sent their teacher. And even though it was a horrible rainy day, that 2024 year, came away so enamored with the whole program. They corralled 25 volunteers and 100 kids to replicate a watershed day, which I put in the chat so people could check that out. But if you could talk about the May 7th event and
Sure.
what is possible for teachers who want to do the same thing.
So yeah, absolutely. And this was again kind of the brainchild of Lake County Lake Lovers. Let's bring more teachers in. People have to see what you're doing, and such an important component now of what we do on Butler Lake Day is to find that staff member who will has that spark, and we can work with that spark to grow that fire into a program at their own school. It's really not hard to inspire a teacher when they're out there seeing what we're doing and how the kids are responding. So, and part of what the ECOS group does too is help tour those teachers around, take them to the different locations so that they can see what the kids are doing at each of our stations, and kind of give an overview of their experience. So on May 7th, if any teachers, educators, local community members, the village is, board is invited, our school board is invited, our administration is invited to come and actually just see and hear from our student leaders about what it is that we do. And one thing that we're trying to kind of coordinate this year is giving teachers and educators that experience of doing the walkthrough and then providing some kind of time and space to um, think about and toss ideas around about how this might work in their space. So if you feel like you're interested and you might know someone who's interested, definitely connect to me through Mary, right, in terms of trying to coordinate a visit, because it does have to be kind of coordinated through our school.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And with Ben
mhm.
Rodriguez
And with Ben
help?
Rodriguez, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So he Ben Rodriguez works at our district, and he is working to coordinate bringing some of the teachers from our sister school in the district, Vernon Hills High School, to see how this might fit for them, right? A program like this might fit for them as well. So,
Yeah, beautiful. And I know that Buffalo Grove plans to recreate their program and grow it. And they've added another one, I think, with Palatine High School that's asked for requests
oh,
for
great.
support.
Fantastic.
So also, if you're in the chat and you would like to volunteer for to support these schools, let us know. And I would love to hear from Miles Gurish, who is here, who you kindly connected for our Butler Lake lake management planning session, and he came in and had so many great ideas. Miles, if you could unmute and maybe share what is it about the program that excites you so that we hear the student perspective, and maybe there's a specific place-based experience you remember that will always be something you reflect on. And thanks for joining, Miles. I didn't tell you I'd be putting you on the spot, but so maybe he had to walk away.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, let me just fill in. Oh yeah. I don't know.
that would be
Miles, are you
great.
there? He's unmuted, but it looks like his microphone isn't working. Miles, will you try to work that out? I'll give you a little introduction of you because Miles is just a shining example of a student who um, got involved last year in the Macroinvertebrate station as an ECOS member. So he was kind of assigned to check out that station, make sure they have what they need, make sure they don't need any supplies. Like we had kids with walkie-talkies, and so we could make sure that all the different locations were supported. So his role there was just to make sure they had they needed, and then to maybe check in and move on. Miles did not leave that macroinvertebrate station the entire day. And it's not something that he had background in per se, right? But he just really loved what they were doing there and then ended up helping out with each subsequent class that came to visit that station. So Miles became one of like the subject matter experts that was helping to run and show students how to do things and support that station. So we're really excited this year to have Miles back as a senior, who's now actually also my AP Environmental Science class, who will be a staff member and supporting that macroinvertebrate station. Miles is also an example of a student who, in ECOS, I'm probably going to embarrass you right now, but came to every single meeting, didn't really say much, right? Like, why is he here? What is he doing, right? But you put him in the right situation, and he was absolutely, he's trying to rejoin here. You put him in the situation of this experiential learning, and you discover new things about your students that you didn't know. And some of the students that you had already kind of decided what kind of student they were or what interests they might have had, you see an entirely different side of your students. I mean, it's incredible what you learn by giving them an experience. Um, some of your highest performing students might not be the best at the lab work, and some of the kids who really weren't engaged previously are entirely engaged. Miles, are you able to unmute now or?
And now can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can. Yes, absolutely.
Sorry, I didn't have my microphone enabled in Chrome or whatever. I'm doing this on my phone. It's a whole thing.
Oh, okay.
So, well, yeah, I wasn't expecting to be put on the spot, but I got something, I guess. So, like, just like for Ecos in general, I really wanted to join Ecos from the beginning because pretty much for my whole life, I've always been super interested in specifically animals and wildlife. I always thought animals were super interesting, and like each one is so unique and really cool. And so that was always what I wanted to focus on, like as a career, which hopefully I'll be able to. But anyways, that's why I want to join Ecos because I want to support wildlife, learn more about it, and prevent like the issues of climate change and all sorts of habitat destruction, just humans doing bad stuff in general. Just prevent that from happening to animals and nature. And so, as for Butler Lake Day, that was an awesome activity to do. I was super looking forward to it because I'd never done it before. And I feel like I really learned a lot with what I did during Butler Lake Day working at the macroinvertebrate station. Like, one fact that I'll always remember that I learned from the other volunteers who were helping is that why it's important to investigate the macroinvertebrates in the water is that it helps us get an idea of the water quality, but over a larger period of time, because there are certain organisms that are adapted to certain water qualities and can maybe survive in different water qualities and maybe are sensitive to change. So if you find ones that are really sensitive to change and can't really tolerate it that are in there, then that tells you the water is probably doing well, for instance. But I really loved the activity. I met a lot of new people. It was just super fun looking at all the macroinvertebrates, looking at all the stuff that was in the water. all the tiny little animals that you never even really think about, because a bunch of them are just like babies that might be something bigger in the future, or just like plankton, stuff like that. But anyways, it was super fun working on all that. And the Ecos Club in general, we do all sorts of stuff for activities around the school, trying to help out. Like really soon, actually, we're doing Earth Day stuff, which I'm sure Dr. Kahn knows all about. We've been working for a while on making a warming stripes pattern with cans that we've collected that show how the average temperatures on Earth have been changing over the last few years and how much climate change has been affecting it. And it's a huge project that we're almost completed with, and we should be able to put out next week for Earth Week, and that's going to be pretty awesome. So just in general, all of the opportunities I've been given, they're all amazing, and it's just a really fun group to be a part of.
Well, and you made our lake planning workshop so much more fun, Miles. I mean, just having the fresh perspective, your love for wildlife, and thinking about the critters. I think it's interesting. Everyone brings a different perspective to our environment. So that's beautiful recounting of what's made it more meaningful to you. And on the topic of macroinvertebrates, I'm also aware we have Gary Swick. We have a number of experts in the chat, and maybe Jennifer, we could take down the Q&A slides so we can see everyone together, and then you can add the gallery view to your views. But I know Gary Swick is here, and he actually brings elementary school kids out for that same activity. And Gary, maybe you could share, I put the link in the chat, but what you're doing this year and how people or youth can learn through your efforts, or even this group could use your guides. And Gary, you're muted. Sorry. I see you.
Here I am. Sorry about
Perfect. Yes.
Eager to hard hear. To follow Jennifer, but if I may, I just want to kudos Lake County lake lovers for supporting her, and this is just how this stuff works. And she is like a unicorn teacher. Like, I'm sorry, wherever you live, finding a teacher like that is like a miracle. And but if you want to start a program, that's what you need, is a teacher that is willing to be a champion. They're not just punching in and out. Like, they really are dedicated to what they're doing. But I've known lots of champion teachers that can't do their work because they don't have the support. And oftentimes that's the direct administration in the school, and it's really a shame. But I loved reminiscing, hearing about all that stuff. It was a lot of my same pathway. Like, she talked about being a student and taking Rivers biology. I was part of the group that wrote those books, and was in a beginning teacher in that whole concept. So, at any rate, that it's just doing a great job and all the right things for education. And I was lucky. I didn't know what I was doing when I started, but it was doing the field work and this authentic work, and just the assessment results, like getting high scores on an AP test by not studying the material. It's like demonstrating that we're not making nuts and bolts. We're not cramming content into kids. It's developing them as thinkers. And you got to be, these are not like easy multiple guess answers on an AP test. You have to really think deeply, and kids get that opportunity when it's excuse me, something they care about. So, like, that's the ticket. Like, if I was the king, like that, oh, I shouldn't say that, but if I was in charge of all education, that's how it would roll. And that's how I try to lead schools and teachers, et cetera, all the way to careers. Like that is a missed thing. These kids are wondering like what's the next step, and they don't have ideas. And then when they can see people in the field, um, it's just really eye-opening for them, all the opportunities. And lastly, kudos for trying to train your colleagues and help them along to be able to do this. So getting the Friends of the Fox River, our standard thing is getting kids in their local streams and collecting data to assess water quality. It's a lot of the same things that are done with using benthic macroinvertebrates to do the biological analysis. We do physical and chemical. We try to be really flexible, whatever concept teachers need, whatever time frames they have. But the main thing is getting kids in their local streams, connecting them with nature. And if it's in their hood, then they can be bringing their friends there, their family there. They can share their knowledge base to that. We'll cater ourselves to whatever a youth group wants to do, but basically we're demonstrating to them that you're not just managing a creek or a lake, you need to manage the watershed, the whole area around it. And that's what is impacting the water quality. But if you go on our website, we have a tab under,
We'll
I
just put
think
it
it's
in the chat.
yeah, about we have a water quality monitoring manual, but the key is um, I don't know. I'm not sure what else you want me to say, but just getting kids out and doing things. My continuum is if you make them aware of something, then they want to understand it. And more the higher level of understanding they get, the more they appreciate it. And when they start appreciating it, that's when they want to take action and do something.
Mhm.
I'm sorry everybody can't have a fish kill at their school, but like that's the ticket. That's, how it should work. So thank you, Jennifer, for being such a great leader.
Yeah, and you're muted right now, Jennifer. I did text Bill Cody if his ears were ringing. He's at the Wisconsin Lakes and Rivers event right now, but I know Jim Bland is also here, and he has given us this wonderful book referred to understanding lake water quality data. I'm going to put it in the chat, but Jim, I know you have observed and been part of these programs. What's your vision or advice to folks who want to expand on what Jennifer's doing? If you could unmute. Great to have you here. Thank you.
Number one, what a wonderful, wonderful program. Kudos, Jennifer. You've done absolutely great work. I have this coming year, you're going to be working with Lake County Health Department. And my question for you, are they going to be out on a monthly basis, or are you going to try and do more frequent types of sampling there? That's one thing. The second thing is I have 5 or 6 different types of in-water and watershed related types of projects that you could potentially do that the kids could contribute to. A simple one is measure the water temperature. There are sons these days, there are electronics these days that can take a continuous record of water temperatures. And the water temperatures are driving the character of the fauna in different directions. I'm hopeful that my macroinvertebrate book was helpful to that. But at some point in time, if I could get together with you, I have 5 or 6 different types of projects that build on the things that you've already done that the kids could contribute to.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, to address your first question about Lake County Health Department. So they come out every year for Butler Lake Day to participate in the electrofishing activity specifically, which is fantastic because they bring a team out who works with the kids and teaches them what they're doing and then actually helps them with the identification and the minnow sampling as well, which is great. So they don't have any current plans to be monitoring on an ongoing basis. In fact, before the Butler Lake 2015 report, we had the Butler 2005 lake report. So there's a gap of 10 years there where ideally, if they were staffed the way that they wanted to be, they would do a lake report every 4 to 5 years on a rotating basis. And now we've exceeded 10 years since our last report. But from what I understand, this summer will be the summer of Butler Lake. That will have a new report for 2026, which is very exciting. That will have that fresh data. So they will be out at the lake, often taking all of the different data points that go into their 2026 lake report. Just looking at the way that the 2015 lake report is set up, it looks like a lot of that data is collected mainly between May and August. So yeah, I do anticipate they'll be out a lot. But this is part of why the lake monitoring program through Lake County Lake Lovers is so important because there's no one out there taking all of the data that we need to get the full picture of our lake's health and changes, right? Developing a baseline of data in order to understand changes.
Yeah, one of the things that you have is you have zebra mussels. And one of the things that the students can do is to monitor the zebra mussel veligers. What that involves is taking plankton toes of a given dimension, putting the results in a microscope, and you have to polarize the microscope to be able to do it. But the students can start to take counts of what the status is of that. They could also, if they chose to, build some experiments relative to what the impact of the zebra mussels are on the lake. That would be a very, very big deal.
So yeah, actually, one thing I forgot to mention in the presentation is that I did write a proposal 2 years ago for us to have a summer course in field ecology, where we could extend some of our research and data collection through a course that's offered for credit as a science credit for students over the summer to be learning about the scientific method and data collection through our lake and our shoreline and all the habitat that makes up our campus. That was approved this year. So for this will be the first inaugural year of a summer course in field ecology. So you and I are definitely going to touch base soon because we have some project ideas, on the stove cooking right now for how we are going to engage our students over the month of June. So we'll take that offline because it sounds like we have a lot to talk about and opportunities, and we have a lot now in terms of equipment because of grants that we've gotten. So it looks like you and I need a date.
Is there? Hopefully, I'd like that a great deal. As you talk about what you are developing, is that a capstone AP program?
No, it is not. In fact, so it's actually offered to freshmen through seniors, which is amazing because our district currently does not offer any science courses besides high school, besides the chemistry class that they offered online over the summer. So the other issue is that our freshmen don't have any courses, really the very limited choices in terms of summer school courses that they can take. So the district really pushed hard, when this course is approved to allow it to be open to freshmen through seniors, which I think is fantastic because our focus is on field methods for ecological research. And scientific method is something that all of our kids need practice with in real world applications. Even our seniors benefit from understanding how the scientific method plays out and what short-term and long-term data collection and trends really tell you about the world.
Well, the freshmen are the ones that are going to be documenting the trends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then eventually, right, we'll have that longitudinal data between what we're doing with Lake County Lake Lovers and our monitoring and what our summer course is able to do and ECOS and AP Environmental Science. We're all going to be contributing data to get a much fuller picture of our campus as a habitat and our lake as a backyard.
One of the things that exists is going back a ways is there are watershed plans that have been created. They were created in 2020. And one of the things that's part of that are atlases of the watershed in total, including different types of modeling that is capable of doing predictions of nutrient delivery. And those are things that are more complicated, but the students have every ability to contribute to it and use
Absolutely.
some.
And it's a fundamental part of understanding our watersheds, right? What are the inputs? What's the land use, right? Like how does that all factor in terms of developing solutions? We really need to understand what's going into the lakes and what is our
and
watershed.
and especially thank you for what you're doing. It is greatly appreciated.
Yeah, you know what, the students are what drives it for me. Just seeing the impact on students. And again, until last year, it wasn't even my students. So just seeing the impact though it's had on kids, I think anyone would want to carry something like that forward and to continue to do it. But what you said is absolutely right. Without the support from our administration, and then also largely something you don't think about as much, but our buildings and ground staff who is entirely supportive of our logistical needs and making things happen for us. Um, they have been incredibly supportive. So even with a supportive administration, without a supportive building staff, it makes it hard to execute the kinds of things that we're doing with students. So
Yeah. Excellent comments, guys. I know Scott, Alan, and there are three Allens on this call. How about that? If you haven't yet chimed in, if you'd like to comment, I know you all bring expertise, or you have a question or a request. And Mary also, or Sandy and Chuck, please just unmute or just type a note. I don't want to call you out. Scott, go ahead.
Yes, hi. I just wanted to say thank you to Jennifer, first of all, for everything she's doing. It is so nice to see that there is not only interest in Butler Lake again, but that it's being pushed forward by the young members of the community. My father was principal at LHS for 30 plus years.
oh,
And the reason I mention that is I am probably one of, I think there were 4 or 5 of us at one point, the original Butler Lake kid. Back in when we were in 5th grade, we had been fishing over behind the school and stopped in the main office after catching nothing but weeds, and we're waiting to speak to my father. And the head of the science department, Dr. Norma Munson, happened to be standing in the office. It was during the summer, and she heard us complaining, and she said, "Are you guys interested?" And it was her, a fellow biology teacher like yourself from LHS, that said, "You would want to take a walk." And she took us back into the woods off of where the bike bridge is off of Bull
mhm.
Creek back there. And she showed us some things, including things like an illegal storm sewer that most people don't know that's there, that carries lawn fertilizer from the Interlochen neighborhood into Bull Creek. And it was never approved. It was put in illegally. And the reason why I chimed in is I have an amazingly large amount of information about the history of Butler Lake, predictions that were made by the DNR and the Army Corps back from studies back in the 70s. It gave a 25-year prediction, which we've already come and gone. And the 50-year prediction is pretty much we're sitting on now. And all this information came from identical copies of files, one that belonged to LHS and one that belonged to the city. And because our little group of kids started showing up at board meetings and saying, "Why can't you fix the lake?" And they said, "Well, money this and, studies that." And as a bunch of, 12-year-olds were like, "Well, that's a stupid reason." And we put the village on the spot, and we too ended up in the Tribune and the Herald and the Independent Register and all this other stuff. And because of that, and because of the fact that My group of friends, parents were involved as community leaders as well. The city and LHS gave us the files. They said, you kids are making more progress because you're kids and there's interest that you're kids, and you're going up and standing up to the village board and saying why. These files were handed to us. I lugged them around the country for almost 40 years as I moved and pursued my career. And unfortunately, after I got back in the area, I'm just north of town, up on the border, the mice got to them. So all of this information, unfortunately, two of the people that were my friends in this group have passed away. It's myself and one other person that has this information, and it's tucked in our brains. And a lot of this includes things that I took a walk with the city engineer 2 summers ago and pointed out, like the fact that just off of the shore behind the tennis courts, there's an actual area of verified quicksand. And back in the 70s, an art teacher went to cut some cattails for a still life they were doing in class. And the gym class was headed out to that back practice field and heard a scream. And she was stuck up to her knees. By the time they went and were able to get a rope, she was up to her armpits. And my father was principal back then and can verify the entire story. And the city had no knowledge of the quicksand being there, or that it was verified as legitimate quicksand by the Army Corps, because the files had been given to a bunch of 12-year-olds. And at that point, they never asked for them back. And now all of this information, including the original layout and design of the lake, Butler Lake once crossed 176. It went right underneath the auditorium and turned into a stream that went over a bridge right at the main entrance to the Butler Lake building. There was a bridge at 176, which goes and becomes Dawes. The lake went right up Dawes and ended up in a swampland that became Nicholas Dowden Park. And so all of that information, along with what I can remember from projections about fish kills that had happened prior, and the nitrates and phosphates and other things that were being an issue, are stuck in my head. And I would love to share them with somebody, but the city was convinced they had a copy of the files after I met with the city engineer. And he later called me and said, I could have sworn we did, and we don't. And I said, I know, sir, because I told you they were in my garage for 30 years. And so if anybody wants any of this information, there's myself and one other that was a part of all of these studies and things that the lake did. Our little group were the ones that were responsible for the dredging that occurred in the late 70s. The spoils became the Winchester Road soccer fields. And so it was our group that started the local hype enough to force that to happen back then. And I've got all the info if somebody wants it. So it's just out there. All somebody needs to do is reach out, and I'm happy to meet with you and share any of the information that our group of students was able to do with the support of teachers from LHS.
It sounds to me like a drops of ink interview that our students can interview you and document, that oral history.
Dean Larson, who was the assistant superintendent and kind of the unofficial historian and preservationist of LHS, is the one that gave us the LHS copy. And, obviously, working with my father, he knew he could trust the information. So the LHS copy of the files, and then Alan Schertz, who I believe the municipal building's named after now, who was the town manager at the time, said, he literally said, you kids are getting more traction with this being a bunch of kids than we ever are, and they just handed us these things, and we had them in boxes for years. But yeah, we have the original WPA reports when it was dredged to 30 feet in the 30s as a WPA project, and how the island came about, and the damming, and the effect of Loch Lomond and St. Mary's on the effect of this, and how it all plays into this. And so
Scott,
that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. That's
anytime
a lot
you
more
want
to
the
dig
info,
into, for sure.
Yeah, anytime you want the info, I'm the school knows where to find me, and I'm happy to sit down and just share this history with students, or with you, or with someone. But unfortunately, now that I have a 6 at the beginning of my age, I'm at the point where it's kind of like pass the info on, and maybe something will finally happen with the lake. So
well, Scott, you'll be pleased to know there's a Friends of Butler Lake that's formed, that is now an active group that will be tracking the monitoring, and a number of people from that group are in this call today. Actually,
great.
And then I know we're at the top of the hour, and we had promised an hour-long program, and no one else is unmuted, but I do know Alan Hagert's here, and he just has tracked the history of Lake Villa. It's the comments you shared are, I'm sure, something that Alan might replicate, but
there's some amazing things. One of the things that we found out is, where the county sheriff's office is, right off of Winchester Road. And back apparently in the gangland era of the 30s, when the mobsters were using Lake County as their hideout, many of the weapons used in some fairly infamous crimes were, after the trials were held at the at the courthouse, they ended up back at the county sheriff's office, and to get rid of them, they all ended up in Butler Lake.
Wow. Well, that sounds like a story. I just want to give people a preview to what's ahead with Lake Lovers. Thank you, Scott. That was a great lead into our Lake Stories. Our annual reception will be happening this year on Sunday, the third Sunday in July. So mark your calendars for that. I think that's July 16th or whatever. So we won't be doing it on a Thursday. And that's Lake Appreciation Month, and we heard about the mobsters in the Fox Lake area last year, so maybe we'll have a mobster story on Butler Lake this year. But we also pointed out next month we're going to be talking about dredging. There's an expert, Peter Barini, who actually helped with the dredging project here in Butler Lake, and many of our lakes are wondering, is dredging or biodredging the right way to go? So you can hear about how to plan for your dredging, how to assess the fit, and I put the link in there so you can register today for that. And I guess the rest, I think you all know, you can join or share the Lake Lover community. It's open to everyone, and we just really appreciate your thoughts on topics there, and also your contributions to this time. So thank you for joining us tonight. We'll have a recording of this together, and just really appreciate seeing everyone and the good work that each of you are doing to help bring people along. And most importantly, Jennifer, thank you for engaging the youth and giving us such an inspiring example. And you credit us regularly. We're really happy to just pile on and follow your great leads. So, and Scott, you're a great addition to the team. So we'll look forward to more history.
And congrats again to Jennifer.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for being here and hearing about our story, and let's go viral, right? Like let's spread this in the county and beyond.
Yeah,